a lot of us have talked about the fact that FISA Logan needs to be completely tossed out.
I'll be honest with you, and this pains me to say this, but I don't trust you. I don't think that this is necessarily a funding problem that we have for your agency as much as a leadership problem. And between the lack of transparency in hearings like this and in intel hearings, your weaponization and politicization of issues and instruments of national security against innocent Americans and against institutions like churches, and the fact that you have held no one truly accountable for prior FISA abuses that we have all seen and recognized. I think you yourself have acknowledged that there's been abuses.
The fact that you now have got members of Congress, Logan, I mean, that are being that direct to say, you know what, we don't trust you anymore.
Yeah.
We don't believe you.
I don't trust you. I think that's the first thing he said. I'll be honest with you, and this pains me to say it, but I don't trust you.
Do you think FISA can be fixed through amendment processes, or do you think it needs to be kind of thrown out the door and something else to replace it needs to be ready to go? I think that will serve a purpose, but with much more, safeguards on the rails.
That's what we're trying to solve for. How do you get the tool without allowing there to be an abuse? And the abuse is that individuals who are gathering intelligence are allowed to listen in on Americans if their strategy was to listen in on a foreigner. And so they have been able to manipulate this process to say, oh, I'm really going after a foreigner, but they're listening to a U.S. official. And by the way, Jordan, these U.S. officials sometimes are members of Congress. Members of Congress need to be much smarter about what's happening. I have been a part of the arguments inside the intel community where I've had to push back on how they classify that U.S. official who may happen to be a member of Congress, so that they don't give away a description that everyone would then know exactly who they're talking to, who got wrapped up into this conversation. And so the abuse is real. And for anyone to just look at a piece of paper and say, oh, no, we've got a way to get around this, I see it on paper, they don't understand the actual practice versus the academic exercise of writing a bill in Congress.
Part of this is when you are heading up the FBI and you've been told time and time again about these political problems. There's reports on it, that going after churches, and that the people informing you. So when you go and testify and you get up there then say, well, this only went out in Richmond and it was never implemented, and then those people didn't get you all the facts. And so Christopher Wray had to come back and say, well, yeah, it did actually get out all across the country. And there was even someone put inside a church in Virginia to try and recruit agents and people to work on this and get testimony, get evidence that they're somehow these Catholic extremists. And that's just one example. But they can replace those people as director of the FBI. Instead, he has allowed it to be run by the entrenched bureaucrats who have this animosity that they now feel they can utilize the tools of law enforcement, even like FISA, to target Americans and American political actors that they disagree with.
We have clear and unmistakable evidence that the FBI and the DOJ have engaged in dystopian abuses which violate, at least in my opinion, the Fourth Amendment of the United States Constitution. So I think the American people are right to distrust both Christopher Wray and his staff. After all, Christopher Wray and the FBI, they've gone after traditional Catholics, they've gone after parents at school board meetings, they've gone after individuals who have purchased Bibles, they've gone after purchasers of Cabela merchandise, as if somehow that's an indication of extremism. So the American people are right to distrust the FBI.
A few amendments that went through the House of Representatives. And I'll start with, we've gotten to Amendment 5 so far. 4 out of those 5 have passed, and there's one additional amendment they're voting on now. The first amendment, which was the amendment that would prohibit warrantless searches of U.S. persons' communications. So not foreigners' communications, but U.S. persons, which, by the way, you think it's the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. Why would you even need a provision to protect Americans? That got voted down and lost.
Republicans 128 for the amendment, 86 against, 7 did not vote. So there's some that people no-showed.
Right.
Democrats 84 for the amendment, 126
So
against.
that's how you get to 212.
Yeah, and 6 did not vote.
A decent amount of Democrats there joining to trying to get this passed as well. So there was bipartisan support and bipartisan opposition. It's also sad to say because, and again, I don't think you can blame this on Mike Johnson and one Republican. There have been Republicans who have just quit. And so they're not there.
Mm-hmm. Why does this one is the one that doesn't have that sort of unilateral feeling?
Oh, it was the one that the intelligence community didn't want the most because they like the fact to be able to do this without having to go before a judge and get a warrant. They don't want to have to prove probable cause.
Yeah.
They don't want to have to say, they want the power to spy.
Right. So it's
without,
just power.
Oh, it's power. So without any oversight. And so they can start the process. And again, the second amendment to the FISA that this did pass, which again, it makes them put out reports to Congress on a quarterly basis, the number of U.S. persons that the queries conducted. So that's good to know. I mean, we're going to know how many more Americans are getting caught up in this process, and maybe that will ultimately lead to more changes. Also, Amendment 3, this one's big.
Okay.
Because it did pass by a voice vote, and it prevents the resumption of a bouts collection. So if they just want to say, you know what, we want to learn about that MAGA movement, and is there any foreign involvement there, like Russia, things like that.
They can just do it.
And they could just do it. That would be prohibited now. So you'd have to at least have something specific. It's not a warrant.
Probable cause kind of
Just
situation.
we want to learn about something. You don't get to use intelligence resources like wiretapping and warrantless wiretapping and listening in on people, so tracking their data just because you want to find out about something. So it's got to be clear that. Number 4 that did pass, it actually adds international narco trafficking operations to Section 702. So that, I think, is a positive one with fentanyl, so that they can use, the law enforcement can use this to go after those bad actors in China and we've seen in Central America as well. The 5th one, that also went through a voice vote. That enables the use of Section 702 to vet foreigners traveling to the United States. So again, if there was information that was already out, you could use that information to make America safer. I don't see any problem there because, again, that's on foreigners. I don't know if we've gotten anything on the... Okay, the 6th Amendment passed. That remedies an intelligence loophole that updates the definition of what an electronic communication service provider is under Section 702. So what didn't pass was what we thought would be the strongest provision, which was the provision to get in a warrant. They continue to have the warrantless wiretapping power.